We got another one. Miami adding serious talent to that running back room from the 205 to the 305. Kevin Riley, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Welcome into the Everydayers. We have a new Miami Hurricane to talk about. Four-star running back out of Tuscaloosa County, Alabama. He pledged a verbal commit last night, Monday night, to the good guys. Kevin Riley is going to be a Miami Hurricane. Those who watch and listen to this show daily, you know we're big fans of Kevin Riley, and it's actually my understanding that that was the top running back target on Miami's board, that they wanted Riley even more than they wanted Jarrett Gibson from IMG Academy. So Miami gets their number one target, 5'11", 195 pounds, well-rounded back. To help us break down Kevin Riley, another guy who I know is a big fan of Riley, Brian Smith, our recruiting overlord here on the Locked On Network, is with us. Brian, how are you?
Doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. And you were among the first to tell me over a month ago, 6-week time just doesn't go by at normal speeds when you're dealing with this many official visits and recruiting. But you told me before anybody else, I think, to watch out for Kevin Riley, that this is a running back Miami really liked, okay? And they're able to get that summer commitment from Riley. What is it about this player that makes him so special?
Actually, I have something coming out about the entire running back room and the recruiting coming up tonight with him as part of it. He's the most well-rounded back amongst the four guys that they've got committed or signed in the last two classes. And I mean, all of them are national recruits. Yeah. So that kind of puts it in perspective. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the vision, he's got the power, the natural forward lean, he can catch. He is an all-down, every-down back. I know I had told you, and I'm not saying he's going to reach this status, but in terms of style, he reminds me of Portis. That's a pretty good comparison for anybody, a former NFL player. So, I mean, I can't think of a better way to compliment him than to put Chris Wheatley-Humphrey next to him, like running different plays off of those guys. One's a super blazer. The other one can go anywhere. Then the last class, I mean, you got two guys that were Fletcher and Johnson. I mean, they have killed it at running back. This is kind of the culmination of an all-around back to finish it off. Miami's running back recruiting is absolutely five-star.
So depending on which site you look at, I tend to look at, 24/7 and On3 or Go-Tos, just in terms of their rankings. 24/7 Sports has Kevin Riley as the fourth-ranked running back in the class. On3 is not far off from that. They've got him as the fifth-ranked back in their class. He's a four-star on both services. He's a composite four-star. How high do you rank Kevin Riley compared to some of the other top backs out there?
Because of his versatility and the spread era that we're in, I think he's good enough to be considered a top 100 player because you can put him in the game in any situation. The days of the first down back, the third down back, et cetera, especially with teams that run tempo, you can't do that. And Kevin can play in the slot. He can play traditional running back, halfback, whatever you want. Love his versatility, and that's why I think he's an elite player.
Miami, you mentioned it. They've got a really young running back room, and obviously Wheatley-Humphrey and Riley are not going to arrive until the season after this one coming up. But I'm looking at 2024. Trevante Citizen is going to be around. He's got, as of right now, 4 years of eligibility left. Depending on his injury situation, he could even be granted an extra year, depending on how much he plays this season. You've got Mark Fletcher and Chris Johnson. They're going to be true freshmen in 2023. A.J. Allen has 3 years of eligibility left. Don Chaney, I think still as of now has 3 years of eligibility left. Henry Parrish will be out, I think, out of the picture by the time Riley and Wheatley-Humphrey arrive. So that depending on how all these players pan out, of course, on paper, that looks like one of the better running back rooms in the country in a couple of years.
How could you rate it any other way?
Yeah.
I mean, every one of those kids was highly coveted. and every one of them has their own set of skills, and there's a lot of speed. Just for the people out there that don't know, Johnson and Wheatley-Humphrey are track guys. I mean, flat out, go get it. Johnson ran 10-2 this year in the finals. He was, I think, the fastest kid in Florida. It's amazing how much speed they've added. And again, they got size too. Like Fletcher's 220, 225. Great complementary pieces to each other. It's got to be fun to be Tim Harris Jr. right now, because any guy he trots out there is a pretty darn good football player.
So the Hurricanes now, with the addition of Kevin Riley, he becomes their 12th verbal commit for the class of 2024. I'd like to think Miami is only getting started in the class of 2024. And they now have, according to 24/7 Sports, the 23rd ranked class in the country. I think the last time you and I spoke, they were around 26 or 28, something like that. So Riley, helps bump up their average a little bit. Miami hasn't had the type of week that Florida has had, who have risen somehow to number 3 in the country. But how do you feel about the way Miami has been trending these last couple weeks?
This is almost exactly like what happened last year.
Yep.
Kind of started off steady in June, and then the last week or so of June into about the 10th of July, all hell broke loose. And that's just, it's part of it. I've told a lot of other people on the Locked On Network, etc., be patient. These kids are taking their visits for a reason. So I expect them to get at least one commitment pretty much every week for the next 3-4 weeks, and it could be multiple. I'm not saying it's going to be like Florida's barrage. That was bizarre. Usually doesn't happen in that short of a 4-day time frame, but whatever. I expect Miami to get 4 commitments, 5 commitments before the month of July is up and now. And they will be somewhere in the top 10 probably by the time the football season starts. And that's all that really matters. And then you can kind of focus on the kids that still are trying to figure it out, like Jeremiah Smith or something like that.
Yeah, and Jeremiah Smith is, we think, making his official visit to Miami this weekend. It's been kind of a floating calendar with him, but I do want to talk to you, because we're only getting started here with Brian Smith, who shares his recruiting expertise with us every week here on Locked On Canes. Miami's got another big official visit weekend coming up, and it's the final OV weekend of the summer. July is going to mark a dead period, so it's going to be a blowout this weekend. A lot of the players visiting are guys who are already verbally committed to Miami, but there are a number of players who are uncommitted who are coming in. And I want to talk with Brian about players. Well, this guy is committed somewhere else, but Jaylen Heyward is going to be on campus, a 4-star Georgia verbal commit, one of the top safeties in the class. Uncommitted linebacker Chris Cole is going to be in for a visit. 4-star offensive tackle Isendre Ahfua is going to be in. 4-star safety Zavier Mincey. 4-star athlete Ricky Knight, among so many others. We got to break these guys down with Brian Smith when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Guys, baseball season is in full swing now. There's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That means you have nothing to lose on that first bet. Just go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to join today. And if you've been paying attention to the Miami Marlins and the role that they've been on, safe to say they covered yesterday when they won 11-0 against Toronto. If you want to cash in on what the hometown team is doing, you're going to check them out on FanDuel. Do not miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. I love how easy it is to sign up. I love how safe and secure the app is, how easy it is to get paid. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And to the everydayers, if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, you want to join our exclusive SMS texting service through Subtext. I'm including a link in the show description below to sign up. We share a lot of recruiting updates out there, which is pretty timely, with the summer that's going on with Miami. I give you guys show exclusive, pre-show notes, breaking news, random Canes thoughts that pop through my head. You can get SMS text directly to your phone from my phone, completely free for the first 14 days. And then if you want to keep supporting us after that, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of extra added value on there. We drop Donno balls out there. We actually, earlier today, I dropped a Donno ball that was, something Miami fans will not like, but it's an update on a guy Miami is recruiting. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. So you can click the link below to sign up completely free for the first 14 days to our Subtext chat. We're joined by our network recruiting expert, Brian Smith. So, Brian, let's talk about linebacker Chris Cole. who's visiting this weekend, nephew of Rohan Marley, who was a great former linebacker at Miami. Yeah. 4-star linebacker Chris Cole out of Salem, Virginia, 6'3", 210 pounds. And I think this visit is going to become more important based on something I'm expecting to happen tonight. I mentioned I dropped the Donno ball earlier today. I dropped the Donno ball for James Nesta, who Miami's been recruiting, 4-star linebacker, to actually pick Oklahoma tonight over Miami and North Carolina. So if it does play out that way, that Chris Cole visit becomes even more important. What does he bring to the table?
Speed, length, instincts, hitting. That's why he has pretty much every offer in the free world. Miami, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia. He's pretty good. Yeah, if you got those kind of offers, you're a good football player. He's coming off a recent visit to Georgia, which was an A-plus visit. Alabama and everybody else is after him. I have no idea where the kid's going to go. I've lost track of how many good visits he's got. Miami's up next. It's their chance. He's got family ties, and Miami needs linebacker help. The one advantage they have, look, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want to be in Georgia's situation overall, but their depth at linebacker is on a whole nother level compared to Miami's right now. That's something they're going to be able to sell. So I'm going to be curious to see what Miami gets beyond that. I mean, that's the easy part. How does he blend with the coaching staff and the players? Because Miami's still got to figure it out, because if they can't get him, they need, and they don't get Nesta, they got to figure out linebacker, because that's a very important spot in this recruiting class. Yeah,
no, well said. Your mouth to God's ears. So a player that Miami is trying to flip is Jaylen Heyward, 4-star safety, 6 foot tall, 180 pounds. He's out of Rockledge, Florida, but he is verbally committed to Georgia. Do you think there's an opening here for Miami? Because there are certain players Miami's trying to flip, like a Jeremiah Smith, who I think the chances are slim to none. Do you think there's more of an opening for a guy like Jaylen Heyward?
I would say so. I know him pretty well. He's played for 24K 7-on-7. I've seen him half dozen times, seen him play high school ball. He's a Florida kid, man. When he committed to Georgia early, the first thing I said to myself was, 0 chance this kid doesn't take visits. 0. I knew it's too early. Yeah. I don't know why he committed to Georgia so early. Maybe it's just because they were the national champs or whatever. But my guess was at then and still now that he would end up at one of the schools in the state of Florida. I'm going to go with that still. I don't know which one. It could be a school that's not even trending for him right now. He's a very difficult kid to read, but he's one hell of a football player. He can run. He is yoked. He's a kid that could play multiple spots, be that safety over the slot. He could be a strong safety. He's got a plethora of offers. So hopefully Miami can kind of get that one trending in the right direction. He's been to campus before since he committed to UGA. So Heyward would be an interesting pickup, and he's a kid that's a national recruit for a good reason.
In this cycle, it's been louder on the defensive line than it has been on the offensive line, and people are always asking me, what are some of the top O-line prospects Miami is trying to land? Well, one of those is going to be visiting this weekend. And talking to you off air, I get the sense this is a player you really, really like, and that's 4-star offensive lineman Isendre Ahfua. He's out of Seattle, Washington. He's considered to be a strong Oregon lean if you go by the on-3 trends. And I imagine Mario Cristobal probably had something to do with his recruitment for the Ducks. 6'4", 300 pounds. What can you tell me about this young man?
One of the most interesting recruits in America. He was one of those kids that was a YouTuber when he was a kid. I don't know what league he played. He was a kid that when he walked out onto the field, like in the Little League, you're like, that. I need to see that young man's birth certificate. He was literally twice the size of the other kids. And if I'd have been a parent, I'd been like, hell no. My son is not no. And I'm sure there was some, it was unbelievable. And he played some, it was ugly. It was ugly. He was just murdering people. So he's been a recruit forever. And I'm sure Mario and all the schools out west were after him. But again, Miami's benefiting now because Mario and Alex, the O-line, they were at Oregon. They know all those kids. O'Day, where he's at, tremendous high school football program, one of the tradition-rich programs in the state of Washington. They've always turned out guys. Miami is a very unique piece in this recruitment because it's the one school way over here that he's really looking at. And now they have a chance to get him on campus for a second time. He came earlier this year. I think they could get a steal here. I really do, because it's the different school. you can't go literally further than Seattle to Miami.
Yeah.
There's got to be, I mean, literally, I complain.
Maybe Hawaii to Miami. That's about it.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm curious here. I would not be surprised if he ended up with Miami because I'm sure he's been to Oregon several times. He's familiar with the Northwest. Why hasn't he committed already? Like, that's the easy pick. That's just my gut. I would not be surprised at all if Miami ended up with this kid.
I love it. So when we come back, I want to talk about a player that I felt for almost 2 months Miami has been trending for. He has not verbally committed to Miami or anywhere to this point. Maybe Miami can seal the deal this weekend. We're only getting started here. Brian Smith joins us on Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. Make Locked On's NBA mock draft special your second listen. It's here and it's bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Brian, going back, we've had these conversations in group chats before, you, me, and a few others. I've felt pretty strongly for a while that Miami had been trending with 4-star athlete Ricky Knight III from Benjamin School in Palm Beach. Miami recruiting him as a defensive back. So I've felt for probably about 2 months that Miami's been leading for him. He is visiting this weekend. Do you still feel Miami are the leaders with Ricky Knight, or are there others in the mix now?
FSU and Miami. It's the same two. It's been for a while. If I had to guess right now, FSU because he's been there, but Miami still has the visit. This is one of the old school Miami FSU battles. I'm not saying somebody else couldn't get him, but Florida State, as a matter of fact, the day I went to see him, Florida State was there scouting him. So this could be a signing day deal because it's really close from what I've heard. So Florida State really wants him. Miami really wants him. He likes both staffs. I interviewed him once and he had great things to say about both. This visit is huge for the Canes. If they don't come out at least even or ahead, I will not feel so good. Need to do well when he comes to town.
So another visitor this weekend, uncommitted to this point, 4-star safety Xavier Mincey, 6'3", 180 pounds, out of Mainland High School in Daytona Beach. That's the same high school where LJ McCray plays, who's a Miami target on the defensive line. And LJ, if you go by the trends on the recruiting sites, McCray has been trending to Florida. I believe Mincey has as well, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think Miami has a shot at a player like Xavier Mincey?
They do, but they need to hit it out of the park here. They're trailing. Florida State, Florida have been for whatever it's worth, the rumored teams. He lives north of Orlando. Miami's stretch is, they're more of a South Florida recruiting school. It's interesting when they get a kid like that to visit because they don't have as much clue about the city and the surrounding area around Coral Gables. There's a chance you can make up a lot of ground because of that too. Having seen him play a few times, 6'2" corners do not grow on trees. Yeah. So he's very long. I think he would be a great free safety too. Great kid, high academic kid. So this is one they're going to have to make up some ground, but it's worth the effort.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So overall, big picture, you mentioned earlier that the timeline so far for Miami, it's to this point playing out similarly to the way that it played out a year ago. Do you think the second part of that, which is big time verbal commit starting, and Miami just got one yesterday, so I'm not being too greedy, but we had a lot of 4 stars and a couple of 5 stars drop late in the summer last year, late June into early July. Do you think the trend could play out the same way?
Like I said, I think 4 or 5 commitments between now and the end of July 15th, something like that would be normal. A lot of the kids they're looking at have now taken at least 3 visits, and they're taking more like this weekend. Just mathematically, what the heck else are you waiting on? So some kids, just for an example, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. David Stone's a kid that Miami and the entire free world wants. He's so confused. I will be shocked if he commits this summer. Fair enough.
Yeah.
If you're not ready, don't make a decision. That's cool. But I think over half of the kids that Miami has had on campus will make a decision for or against Miami by the end of the summer. And they've had a ton of official visits. Some of these kids are going to pick the Canes. It's just a matter of who and when. I'll say by the end of the month, I'll have at least 2 more commitments. That would be my guess. This is the 20th. We got a week and a half. Yeah, they got the prospect camp. They got the visits this weekend. I mean, this is a lot of information for these kids to gain. And again, Jeremiah Smith's coming, etc. Why wouldn't they get a few more? You know, this is literally the day. June 20th is like on my account. This is when it starts. This is the day. So let's see what happens. But I'm going 4 or 5 by the end of July.
Great insight and great info as always from Brian Smith. You want to make sure you follow him on Twitter at FBScout_Florida. Check out his work at allhurricanes.com. You can find some of my stuff there as well. Brian does an awesome job for the site and all over Fan Nation. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time. And are you going to get any time off during the dead period, or it never stops for you, huh?
I might take a few hours off.
To sleep, maybe.
I mean, a little bit. That's about all.
I love it. We will talk to you guys again next time. Thank you so much for making us your first listen today and your first watch. Be sure, if you're watching on YouTube, to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel. We're getting so close to 10,000 subscribers. Help us get over the top on YouTube. And if you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, your favorite podcasting app. Subscribe to Locked On Canes, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.